I always known that I wanted to lead, and really serve in leadership. I knew I just wanted to like make an impact with and for people.
Last week, I was trying to seal a deal just like last week, trying to run plays and run it up like the mathletes. It's in my DNA to have hope and make a way.
Back again with another episode, man, on Perfecting Progression. This is episode 3, and of course, this is season 3. We got a special guest on the platform. I'm really, really glad that she was able to find time with me, hop on a call, and come on the platform. This really, really means a lot, man. And we've been nurturing our relationships. There's been networking events that she's been inviting me to, and getting around other, impactful leaders just like herself. And this is really, like I said, this is really, really great. I'm really just ecstatic for her to be on the platform, and she does a lot of great things around the community here in Minneapolis. But, with that being said, I just want to let you guys know about this episode. This episode will be named Turning Pain into Purpose, with the great Bianca Dawkins. So thank you, Bianca, for being on the platform. This really means a lot. And I want you to, let me not talk too much. I want you to introduce yourself as well. I know I introduced you, but, you can kind of say a little bit about yourself if you would like to, kind of talk to the audience and kind of go forward from there if you want to.
Yeah, thank you so much. And Dior, thank you for having me on this platform.
Yep.
I'm super excited about what you're doing, and the platform is so needed right now. It's a space where we can talk about things that are positive. We can give hope.
Yep.
And so I'm really excited about what you're doing. And as Dior said, my name is Bianca Dawkins. I currently work in sports.
Yeah.
And aside from that, I serve on, lots of boards. I really believe in the power of community and togetherness. I'm also a mother.
Okay.
I have 3 amazing children. Andrew, who is 8 years old, Brooklyn, who is 5, and Adrian, he's 2.
Okay.
Yeah.
All boys.
No, I have 2 boys and 1 girl.
Okay, so the girl's name is
Brooklyn.
That's Brooklyn.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So shout out to them. Shout out to them. You guys have a great mother. We're gonna have a great conversation, and like I said, turning pain into purpose and perfecting progression. I think that's just a great alignment that coexists that we're going to have a great conversation on. And thank you for kind of giving your introduction, some of the things that you do. So I guess where I want to start off with is just a little bit more from, the foundational of the upbringing of Bianca. So your introduction, we went over that, but a little bit about your background. Let the people know kind of like where you're from. I know we talked about it a little bit, but I know you said your roots kind of started off in New York, and then you transitioned over to Minnesota. But kind of talk a little bit about your roots and your, where you're a native of.
Yeah, so my roots did start off in New York, Long Island, because when people hear New York, they automatically go to Manhattan. So Long Island, West Hempstead. But really, a lot of my shaping took place here in Minneapolis. And by what I mean by shaping is, when we talk about the pain and purpose, a lot of that, becoming who I am took place here.
Yep.
I did have the, best of both worlds, being able to go back to New York in the summer times, after school got out, and we'd be there for months, and then we'd come back here.
Yep.
But, Minneapolis is a really special place for me, not only, as a young girl coming up here, but then, in my professional world. So a lot of my molding and shaping has been here. I graduated from Southwest High School, which, I really hold near and dear to me. But, I've always, we've lived in North Minneapolis, so I know what they call it, NFL, North Side for Life. So
Okay. You teaching me.
So definitely, I know Minneapolis at its root, and it's just been a great place that has shaped me, that has molded me to who I am, who I became, and who I'm becoming. So that's just kind of how my upbringing went.
I like
yeah.
that. I had a curious question that kind of popped up in my mind. With, you said your daughter is Brooklyn, right?
Yeah.
Was there any like, with you being from New York, like, what made you name your daughter Brooklyn?
Yeah, so it's interesting. It does have a correlation in New York.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at. My
So I did name her Brooklyn, and I made sure that her name had two N's because, one, she's a second child. But if you look up the meaning of Brooklyn, it means the splitting of two cities. And because she was my second child, and she, the splitting of two cities, I was like, wait, it makes sense for me. And I love having meaning behind everything, and so there definitely is a correlation there.
Most definitely, most definitely. Well, I do appreciate you kind of breaking down, where your roots began in New York, and then kind of understanding or breaking down to the audience of your transition being in Minnesota and some of the things that became, pivotal in your life, And I think with going through day-to-day life, we understand that day-to-day life is not always glitz and glamour. We most definitely go through obstacles. We most definitely go through a lot of different things that at the time we wish we would have never went through, but it molds us in so many ways to become the person or the individual that we are currently to this day right now. So I kind of want you to talk a little bit about, maybe some of the obstacles that stood out to you, as a, being in your youth, or just kind of going through, some of your adulthood times of being in Minnesota. What were some of those challenging times that kind of stood out to you that stuck, but then also essentially turned into a purpose? That's kind of what we're going to get into. I think I'm channeling in on some of those painful times that you could remember, maybe, in those areas, but eventually we're going to talk about, how that was impactful to turn into a passion and kind of go into the route that we're going to talk a little bit about,
Yeah, no, I appreciate you asking that, because it's never lost on me, right, of like what built me into who I am. And so I would say the main obstacle was dealing with the violence that we experienced, me and my siblings, and my mom experienced growing up in our homes. As I look back, I realized how much of that has, either created bad coping mechanisms that I brought into my adulthood that I'm now unlearning. And so that was a really big obstacle. I mean, from my vantage point of that situation, like when you're a young child and there's not a lot of emotional availability from adults around, right? We were taken care of from a physical standpoint. But there was, when you're dealing with violence, like you can feel isolated. And we live in a world that promotes isolation, right? And like we don't promote, getting things done together, right? Everybody's isolated. Everybody's in their own lane. That's something that we promote. And I realized early on that wasn't a healthy thing. I also realized from, the obstacles that I experienced that, a lot of Black women deal with emotional eating, right? And so I saw that as something that I took on as like a adult. I was like, wait, like these coping mechanisms I'm learning and they're not healthy. Because we always want to comfort people. We always want to make sure everybody is, good, but we forget to take care of ourselves. And, I would sit back and I would reflect and I'd be like, why am I doing that? But early on, I learned that taking care of others first was how you showed that you were showing up, or that was a responsibility, when really the responsibility is ourselves, right? Because if I'm not well, nothing in my world will be.
Most definitely. And I love that. I think one thing, it's a lot of things that stood out there, but I think one thing that also stood out is just unlearning habits. I think as I get older and understanding just the cultures that we all come from different cultures, but I think being, in the Black culture, we kind of get used to thinking like this is the way. And other people know that this is the way because we kind of all kind of grew up the same way to a degree. And I think, once you kind of get in that adulthood and you start to, get around people of, you're building another relationship with, or get around people that you work with, or get around people that you're, becoming friends with, I think in all those different capacities, you understand the importance behind healthy habits. And I think that's what I really wanted to say as far as unlearning habits is really, really important. And nobody should ever think that, it's just, one dimensional, or there's just one way. You can always learn different mechanisms to, just understand and soak in best habits that are best for you and your community that you create around yourself. You know?
Yeah, and I'll add to that where it really starts with like two things, like self-awareness. But self-awareness only comes when you tell yourself the truth. Like I used to hate accountability, right? And I used to, and I don't want to use the word hate, but I strongly disliked journaling because I realized that I used to fluff up the stories that I was telling myself. But then I was like, hold on, no, you need to be, if you're going to have an outlet to really tell yourself the truth about what you need to change in your life, right? And unfortunately, like a lot of people don't tell themselves the truth. But I think that comes from the world that we live in that shames people.
Yeah, yep. I think it comes from trying to be careful with my words. It's a lot of things. It's really the environment. It's the environment. It's the upbringing. It could be parenting sometimes. It could just be coddling too much. It could be spoiling. It could just be a mix of a lot of different things that comes into the making of a mindset, you know, and then it gets to a point of what you said, self-awareness. Yeah. And if you don't have that self-awareness, that's where it becomes dangerous. So it's most definitely important to be aware of those things. And I think, you know, with us talking about that, I know we talked a little bit about off camera about being in the moment. I wanted to ask you about, like, what does that really mean to you about being in the moment, and then how being in the moment turns you or turns your mindset into becoming influential for others, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think it starts with knowing that being in the moment is not going to take away from progress, right? I think a lot of us just continue to be busy and think that if I sit down or be in the moment for a second, something is going to delay, right? And I have learned that that's not true anymore. And so I think, you know, being in the moment is about gratitude. And so if you can operate in gratitude, right? And I think there's a saying that goes like, be grateful for everything and expect nothing, right? And so you allow yourself to be able to receive. And honestly, like, I'm saying that now, but I used to didn't know how to receive, right? I used to just be, and I still am a giver, but now I know how to receive. And honestly, receiving is understanding that if someone gives you something, you don't have to question the intent and you just know you deserve, right? And so a lot of times I didn't know how to receive, and now I do, and I think it comes from having just gratitude and expecting nothing.
When you say you didn't know how to receive, that's very, very, like, it's intriguing and interesting to me. So when you say you didn't know how to receive, so give me an example.
Yeah.
Give me an example. I need to understand that a little bit more. I'm pretty sure the audience would love to hear that a little bit more, but I think I'm just really thinking about I feel like I share that synergy and similarity with you because I'm very, very humble and I'm very, very like I'm mentally strong and very, very confident. So some of the things that might kind of either come off wrong to a degree, or if I feel a certain energy is off, then I'm already kind of assuming because it's just this deep down feeling of just I know. Yeah. You know, so I want you to kind of talk a little bit about the receiving part because I'm over here listening like maybe I need to do a little bit better with receiving and some of the things that's just kind of dissed out, but I would love to hear that.
Yeah, I think the most simplest like example I can give is like a simple compliment, right? I think if someone is saying, wow, you're doing a great job, and then you start to question, wait, am I, or why are they saying this? And instead of just holding it, right, and being in that moment, you start to feel imposterous. I think even if someone is giving you the opportunity to elevate yourself and you start to question, am I worthy of it? Right? I think part of it is just quieting the noise. And so when I say receive, it's just being willing to take it in and not question it, not feel like you don't deserve it. So it comes from, you know, when you're not able to receive, it really comes from a lack of confidence. It comes from insecurities. And so what I mean by that is knowing that you are enough and you deserve all the great things that are coming for you.
I love that. And I think what it's taking me back to is kind of going back to just understanding when we was talking about the mentality in your environment. You mentioned a few things just now about kind of where it comes from, but I do think even with going through your environment upbringing, it's trauma too. It could be trauma.
Yes.
That's what I was like. Hold on, wait. I know I'm not missing something here. It's everything you said, but I think trauma could make somebody second guess all the time.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, and I think that's why I probably sat here and thought about it. I'm like, man, I'm truly like I know I'm a very, very confident person, and I'm just like I'm so driven to, like, if somebody tells me no, then it's like I'm gonna receive that, but the way I'm receiving it is just like I'm gonna show and prove.
Yeah.
Like, so that's where I feel like not necessarily trauma. It could be trauma, but it could also just be, it can work in both ways. Pros and cons is what I'm getting at. So I think that's kind of where I was, you know, a little bit what I was getting at of like, okay, the receiving end of what Bianca's talking about, like I want to hear an example, but I do think, you know, like I said, trauma kind of plays a factor into that.
I'll add, I think, you know, it definitely is trauma informed, and I think it's easy for us to transfer that trauma too, right? When we're feeling like, oh, we don't. Then you got other people start to question the whole thing. But like, I think growing up, when I think about, you know, part of my upbringing, like all of the trauma pushed me away from my intuition.
Yep.
And like, it took me a while to get back to like listening and trusting myself. And one of my mentors was telling me about a book where like your body doesn't forget trauma, right? But your mind could try to like, you know, trick you out of things. So like when you're in an incident where you're just like, oh my God, this doesn't feel right, or it does feel right, right? You have to really listen to like the energy, your body. And so it's key to just really be in tune with yourself.
Most definitely. That was a good few gems that I feel like you just gave there to the audience. And I think just to kind of transition, so as we talked a little bit about, you know, being in a moment, what that means for you, and then also becoming influential for, you know, your loved ones, the community that you're building, kind of walk us through you being the leader that you are. Now, how did that transition look as you began to want to take charge? I know the first thing I kind of wanted you to talk about is just kind of your understanding around economic development or your involvement with economic development. So just kind of walk us through, like, what did that I guess I want to say, what did that spark look like? When did it happen, or kind of what did it look like when it came to wanting to get more involved in community development?
Yeah, that's a great question. I always known that I wanted to lead, and really servant leadership. I knew I just wanted to like make an impact with and for people. So that came at a really, really early age. And I was grateful that I did have, you know, adults like my mom that would like recognize those qualities in me. So I kept that. I would say, you know, when it comes to the path that I chose to be on, it wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do. I always just like focused on like the feeling. Like, am I being fulfilled from this? And so early in my career, I was like staying in the moment and putting myself in places where I was like, okay, is this actually feeling like, you know, something that I want to be a part of? And so when I did get into economic development right after I graduated high school, the gentleman who I was being managed under at the time, he saw that I had all these passions, and he was like, you know what? You don't even need to focus on all these housing inspections. He was like, what do you want to do? And I realized that there's people in the world that will foster that space for you. But I also recognize that you know, type of psychological safety isn't always available. But when he saw like, hey, she has these other ideas, you know, he gave me the space. And you know, an opportunity that came from that is I had developed a 32-page document. I was 18 years old, talking about ways to deter violence in the city of Minneapolis. And from there, I had sent it to former Mayor T. Ryback at the time and some city council members. And from that, I was nominated as the first youth to sit on the Youth Violence Prevention Executive Committee. And from there, I was like, yeah, like when I keep leaning into my purpose, like God is going to make a way. He's going to open doors. He's going to place you in the rooms where you don't think you belong in, but you do, right? And so every room I entered, I knew that I belonged there, but I also knew that I needed to learn from the people in the space. I never felt like I had it all. And so that's kind of how I got into it, and just continue to put myself around people who, you know, saw my value, and created the space for me to explore that too.
Most definitely. I want you to harp on, man, I want you to harp on the value of, to a degree, I'm trying to think how I want to frame it, the value of like relationships and the value of partnership. So you being in this space of having these ideas, wanting to end violence, getting in front of these powerful leaders and understanding that you can't do it all by yourself, but you do have some great ideas that can push the mission.
Right.
But you just got to get around other people who are like-minded, who are strategic, kind of in this same type of facet. I think it's always important for my audience just to kind of hear, because I'm very relationship-driven, and I know the power that comes behind value or valuing intentional and authentic relationships. So I wanted you to kind of just talk a little bit more about the collaboration with all leaders and even Black leaders as well, kind of in the city of Minneapolis as well.
Yeah, I love that question. Because when I first started off in my career, like the definition that we get of networking is always like, talk to as many people as you can and get cards and do this, right? Definitely. And it's like, it's this busybody like thing. But as I got deeper into my career, I was like, hold on. Any relationship is similar to dating. Like, you got to understand the difference between attraction and alignment.
Exactly.
Because you're not going to be aligned with everybody, right? And there's some times where we, quickly focus on the title of the person, and then you get in the room, you're like, wait, I'm really not aligned. Like, the title was attractive, but like, I'm not aligned. This relationship isn't aligned with where I need to go. And so you really need to understand that. And I think that takes practice, right? But it also takes chances. Like, you need to go and meet people to understand that the energy or the vision or the mission that they have is going to be some reciprocity. It's going to be aligned with you. And so that's how I've approached it. And, it goes beyond just Black leaders. It goes any space that I put myself in, right? And I just need to make sure that, I'm on the journey of alignment, because, like, a lot of times things will appear to look like what you prayed for, and it's really not. And a lot of it sometimes is just a test of, like, do you understand the difference? And so for me, that's how I navigate it all. I'm like, wait, is this alignment, right? And again, that if you're trying to think about, okay, what does alignment feel like? Does it come easy? Does it come natural? Does it feel good? Like, are you forcing it? Because some people do try to force success, and then they learn, like, wait, I just actually push myself further down the path I don't need to go, because we want quick success, right? But, like, legacies are built. And so for me, it's like, it's all going to come, right? But it takes that intentionality to get to that point.
Most definitely. I love that feedback, and I love the harping on alignment. What I would say is that, just kind of, I feel like I am an expert in this space as well, just kind of understanding people. What I'm getting at is there is a deeper level to networking. When people, in professional spaces, or even in undergrad or in school and high school, you're going to have a lot of people that you look up to as your mentors or your teachers that might tell you, or your supervisors, your bosses, that say, hey, when you get in this space, whatever it may be, whatever the capacity may be, meet as many people as you can. Now, a lot of people will receive that and say, okay, surface level thinking, I'm going to just make sure because usually we teach our kids, hey, make sure you look a person in their eyes, shake their hand. Like, that's the surface level. That surface level kind of networking and making sure that you're intentionally or attentively listening to when somebody is speaking to you and speaking clearly and being articulate. But the next level is kind of to seek to understand. So, like, when I'm in this space with you, like, I want to make sure that, I know I can connect with people, but I want to make sure that I'm sitting in this space to really, like, understand where you're coming from.
Yep.
And then I give my input, and then we kind of go forward into, does this align? Do we nurture this relationship? How can we figure out the next steps to make this beneficial for me and you?
Yep.
So I think I think that, again, that's the power behind relationships. That's the power behind, putting a good value to your name to a degree. Because, you only, when you meet somebody, they always want to remember kind of the last conversation that you guys had, or the type of impact that you left them with. Yeah. And I think I kind of refer back to when I met you at the networking event that you and Ayo, shout out to Ayo, that you guys put together. And I think that was a really, really, one of the things that you mentioned was like people got to understand that you can't be comfortable with everything. And sometimes you just got to go out and you got to be a risk taker, and you got to understand that you might fall and bump your head a little bit. But I think those are the times when you grow. And now I'm kind of, again, I'm even with work or even with professional spaces, I feel like I'm kind of at a space where I'm flourishing, but I can really say that there were times where I felt like not like top dog. Like, that's what I'm saying. So I feel like for you to feel like you are arriving somewhere, and just like even with One Goal, like they've been doing a lot of great stuff, you know, with the clients that they work with, but the repetition is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, and I would say to that too, like, I'm okay with some of the things being transactions, right? Like, and some relationships will literally be transaction, and I think that's fine.
Yep.
But I think, you know, one thing that was important for me to understand in my career is I was giving too much power to people to control where I was going.
Most definitely.
Right? And I think when you continue to give that power to people, you're going to get steered off the wrong path. So, like, I think it's important for people to work on and continue to, like, refine the vision for themselves so that you have a compass to navigate from. Because you don't. The worst thing you could do is give someone power over where you're going.
I agree. So I know we talked a little bit about, you know, your involvement with economic development with the city of Minneapolis, and then also your passion and some of your ideas behind ending violence as well, and how that importance kind of around what we just talked about, collaboration and building, you know, valuable relationships. But I kind of want you to talk a little bit about the corporate grant making of it all too now. So like your time with Youth Prize and the Minneapolis Foundation, kind of walk us through, because what we walk in the audience through right now is just some of the stuff that some people might be into and they might want to get into when it comes to economic development. What does that look like? And I'm in my community and I want to end violence too, but now it might be to the point of you really want to make things move from what we talk about now is from grant making, and what does that really mean? So I kind of want you to talk about, I guess not just the corporate side, but just kind of what is grant making, kind of what goes into that, and what was your experience behind that, I guess?
Yeah. So working for Youth Prize, working for Minneapolis Foundation, working for the Greater Twin Cities United Way, you know, at those organizations, I did have roles that focused solely on grant making.
Yep.
And it was such a beneficial, you know, opportunity, because not only was I a part of being a decision maker where those funds went, but what I saw was the power of making, like, those funds accessible to community to be able to actually, like, build capacity.
Exactly.
Because I didn't always see that being in, like, nonprofit world. Like, it was hard to get funding, like, or you basically had to come up with a whole book of, like, why you were capable of having that funding. And for me, I just felt like there were so many inequities of, like, how we were trying to, like, distribute money. And so I had the opportunity to really not only redesign, but to help bridge the trust between communities of color, underserved communities, with these organizations, to say, like, we should be making decisions alongside of them, right? Yep. We can't be the sideline people making decisions for the frontline people. Like, how are they a part of these processes? And so I got to see, you know, RFP processes where we actually brought in those grantees to help us develop the RFP so that we knew, like, this application that, you know, we're putting out into the community is actually community led and focused, and, like, we're not just, like, creating an application that's going to make it harder for people to get funding. And so those inequities that came around just dollars, like, was so, you know, important for me to see, because then I was able to do something about it. And so I encourage anybody who wants to get into grant making to do it, because it's important to have that influence, that, you know, that voice at the table to make decisions about how we are, you know, developing our communities. And so, yeah, it was a powerful experience to be able to redistribute, like, I would say in my career, millions of dollars back into the community.
That's dope. I think it's really, really like great to kind of hear that. Just because I'm gonna be honest, like you have to be in those type of spaces to hear this type of breakdown. So I feel like with me just having the type of audience that I have, and it's many different walks of life, I think that's really, really dope just to kind of hear that, just from your perspective and your growth kind of going into that and being able to be in a position to make action. Yeah. That's kind of what this is. You're in a position to you understand what the community needs. You kind of worked in the nonprofit spaces, but understanding the funding and the grant making of it all, that's what really needs to kind of get done to really make change. So I do appreciate you kind of breaking that down. Also, Bianca threw out a acronym just in case. So RFP.
Yes.
You can say what it is, but I know what it is too. I just want to make sure that we're giving knowledge to the people who might not know what some of these
yes,
acronyms
it's
are.
a request for a proposal.
Yep.
And again, like it's an amazing way to help redistribute resources and wealth.
Most definitely. And I know you talked a little bit about being a part of these groups, that have put you in a position to be a decision maker. I wanted you to talk a little bit about what type of groups were these? I guess what type of boards did you serve on? What type of member what type of boards were you a member of? That's what I'm trying to say. Let's just start there. I'll start there.
Yeah, so currently I sit on 7 boards. I've been sitting on boards since I was 18.
Okay.
They've ranged from city boards, Hennepin County Sheriffs. I sit on V3's board, Maria's Voice, which is a domestic violence organization, Mad Dads, which focuses on men really, right? And also reentry programs. And that wasn't really important to me. I think it came as a shocker to people. They were like, why is she sitting on Mad Dad? She's not a Mad Dad, but, for me, like, my story around that was really important as a young woman who's had a father that's been incarcerated over 20 years. I needed to be in that space. And so I always tie the boards that I sit on back to, like, my upbringing, right? And when we talk about the theme of this conversation here, turning pain into purpose, like, that's how I do it. I always associate it back to, like, my upbringing and the things that have caused pain. So the boards that I sit on are amazing. I always make sure, like, I'm always asking, like, how can I contribute? How can I show up? Where can I make connections? What do you need me to do? I also sit on the board of Girls Taking Action, which I actually was a part of in my high school years, and now I get to sit on and serve them as an alumni, but as a board member. So there is a vast number of boards that I serve, and I encourage people to do it. Like,
going to that. I was about to say, what is the value behind being on a board? Like, somebody that's just saying, like, oh, I hear Bianca talking about this board stuff, or I got a mom or a dad that's on a board, but I really don't know what's the value behind this. Like, kind of walk us through, why being on a board or trying to be on a board is important.
I think it's the constant notion of extending your ladder, right? Because as we continue to climb, sometimes we forget to extend our ladder, and that's what I want to do, right? I want to extend my ladder. I want to put out, the knowledge that I have, the resources that I have back into the earth and into the people, into the community. And so the value of it really is the space, the alignment, the people. It takes, I probably, spend 1 hour or 2 a month with each of these boards, but that hour or 2 is very valuable, right? I could be spending that hour at the nail shop or shopping. And so I was like, okay, how am I redistributing my time to make impact? And so if I can go and do these other things, I can make time to also continue to extend my ladder. And so that's what how I see the value in it.
Most definitely. And then one of the things that I wanted to ask you about, I guess that comes from you being an active board member on these multiple boards. I remember us talking a little bit about, or I think you told me about a fellowship initiative that kind of came out of one of these boards. Do you remember that?
Yep.
I wanted to ask you about, like, what does that, look like? And then also, I think we talked about maybe there was some important projects that I think you worked on with being on some of these boards. I can't remember which one specifically, but I know we talked about a fellowship initiative and then some of the partnerships and projects that you worked on. So I kind of wanted you to talk a little bit about that, just kind of talk about some of the work, that you've been doing, and we want to showcase that on this platform and amplify that. So,
yeah. So when I was serving on the Youth Violence Executive Committee, there was a woman who actually was part of the poll ads who was like, hey, like, you should be a part of this fellowship. And it actually was at Youth Prize. And so she got me connected with Youth Prize, and from that, I was selected as one of their first fellows, which was called the Change Fellows. Yep. And so it was a program that invested in the ideas of 10 young people. Yep. At the time, I was like 19. And what I did was, from that fellowship, I started my first business, which was called Faces of Hope, which was a program that was focused on creating play therapy for youth who are dealing with violence in their homes. So I would work with court mandated programs where they would bring in, the mother and the child who needed to go through a program. And so I would sit in these spaces with youth who were dealing with violence, and we would talk about who are the trusted individuals in your life. We would, create dolls, and we would do play therapy. And it was such a great experience. And from that experience, I actually, this woman who I actually have my podcast with now, had reached out and saw the work that I was doing, and I was able to bring that work into the National Eating Disorder Association. So the same platform that I was doing around play therapy, I got to do that with the National Eating Disorder Association, and I found it to be a super powerful platform to help people not only unveil the pain that they were experiencing, but it goes back into say, how do you create, psychological safety? Who are those trusted individuals? And how do you heal from all of this? So those were some of the projects that came from it, and it was so powerful. And when I tell you, Dior, like, it actually really helped heal myself throughout that process. And I think that's why I did it. Like, definitely. Part of it was like helping heal myself as I was talk about extending the ladder, right? Yep. And so yeah, it was super powerful. So those are some of the projects that came out of it, was that business and the fellowship. Yeah.
Most definitely. I love that. And I appreciate you taking, myself, the audience, just through what did your, space look like when we revolve around taking charge and kind of going through this stuff to be impactful. You most definitely are an impactful person, but I think the next step beyond being impactful is where others can share that energy with you, and it motivates them as well to say, I see, like, not only her vision, but I see what she's created now is helping me see my vision. So I think that's really, really important. And now I'm going to transition into just a new segment that we're doing, with the podcast. I'm calling this the All-In Moment. It's a new segment. And really what this All-In Moment is really capturing, the guests that I have on here. Like, what was that moment just through your journey that made you say, like, I'm kind of figuring out myself. I'm kind of figuring out that vision and my passion, but now I think this is the time to really turn it up a notch or really go all in because of X, Y, and Z things that has happened in my past or currently, in that moment. So I want to ask you, what is your all-in moment, and kind of go forward from there.
Hello, everyone. My name is Bianca Dawkins. I am the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Senior Manager for the Minnesota Timberwolves Lynx. This message is for anyone who wants to be in sports, just to know that you belong here. I did not grow up playing basketball, but I have been able to find fulfillment in being around the game. So again, this message for anyone who feels like they want to be in sports, just know that you belong. That's a great question. I think there's multiple times where I continue to go all in.
Yep.
But the most recent all in moment for me is probably when I just launched our B podcast. And B podcast is really about being in love, loss, and lessons.
Yep.
And the reason why I define that as my all in moment is because I knew that I was going to have to go all in very vulnerably, right? And tell every part of my story to help other people. it wasn't going to be a performance. It wasn't going to be something that I could do in bits and pieces. I was going to have to give my whole self to this. And that means coming with like sacrifices of other things that I was going to I needed to like get rid of to be able to actually go all in on that. And I think we don't really reflect enough on what it means to go all in. So I love this because to go all in means you need to make space. And then that means that you need to remove things to be able to make space. And so, yeah, it was the B podcast. And I knew that, like, if I was going to do this, you got to create space for it. And what does that mean? You got to get rid of the other things that are not serving you. You know, whether it's distractions, relationships, whatever, like, it's time to make space for it. And that's a hard process. Like, it could sound easy right now is what I'm saying, but, like, it's not easy to make space for the things that you know are important. And so, yeah, when you're going to have an all-in moment, you got to create that space, and it's hard.
Most definitely. And shout out to B Podcast. Have you guys done any episodes just yet?
Not yet.
Not yet? Yeah,
Not
okay.
yet. We've done our introduction ones, but now we're leaning into, okay, because there's so much noise right now, but I can't let the noise, like, be a deterrence. But, like, we've done our introduction ones, which has been great. Like, those have been really great, and I'm just ready to, like, when we talk about all in, right, to go all in on it. And so I'm just in this process of, like, what do I need to set aside or to remove to make that space for it?
Most definitely. And while we're, on all in, you kind of mentioned a few things because I think, one, you talked about, being vulnerable. That's accountability because a lot of people are not accepting of being vulnerable because it's just such a, I don't know, like I can't even explain it, just being vulnerable sometimes, especially for men.
I'm not judging, but I'm just like,
but I'm just saying, especially for men, it's like me being vulnerable. Like I'm not even like maybe I might do it, but maybe at my own time. But to show it to everybody else, I'm not doing that. So that's why I feel like what you talking about being vulnerable, and then also figuring out ways to help others. And I think just to kind of talk a little bit, about my platform, like it definitely like attacks and targets a lot of different things that helps amplify, people in entrepreneurship, creators, visionary, executive leadership. But it also captures the you talked about storytelling. Storytelling is so powerful because it helps people. And I think listening to people tell their story and them being experts in their space is just like, you got to seek to understand. You got to understand what she's saying. And if you don't, then it's like, okay, that's when you start to begin to do more research around people who might be just like you in their community, So I think the stuff that you're saying is just it's sparking me a lot more just to kind of speak about it, right now. So I do think that's important when it comes to just what you guys are doing on the B podcast. That's going to be very, very helpful to help other people.
Yeah. And when you talk about like the vulnerability, I appreciate you saying that in men, like, we need to create space for men to feel, because like it comes from your childhood when it's like you're being told like suck it up or don't look weak. But vulnerability is actually a strength, and when you can have that level of emotional intelligence to like be honest with yourself and with others, it's so freeing. But I didn't know probably until like the last year how hard it was for people to actually like open up, say what's on their minds, or because I do feel like, unfortunately we do live in a world where people's feelings are not handled with care. And so once you experience that moment where your feelings are not handled with care, what are you going to do? You're going to avoid, or you're not going to open up.
Exactly.
And so that person that is asking for vulnerability, or the situation that's asking for vulnerability, might not have caused the trauma, but it's going to continue to show up and create that avoidant mentality. But it's just not healthy.
Not healthy. It's not healthy at all. And I think that, we want to make sure, as we talked about a lot up to this point, but, kind of even going into, we kind of going into the new year now, but I think this is just a forever thing. This is a continuous, I don't want to say a continuous project. It's just a continuous practice that you want to implement in your everyday life when it comes to just health. And I think that's really, really important. You know, just healthy habits around everything that you prioritize or want to do. You just got to start it. And I think that's, you know, start it, building a community. And that's what I was going to say. Just the community is important because sometimes people feel that they can't be vulnerable, like you said, because they don't have that community to either go to. They don't know the people that are close friends to them that are like knowledgeable, or they might not open up to it. So now it's making them like, man, whatever, like forget about it, you know? So yes, that is important. But yes, thank you for sharing your all in moment. And I think, you know, as we transition, I wanted, you know, now we're going to talk a little bit about, you know, just kind of like where you're at right now, you know, and kind of how I've heard your name through a lot of different people. Mark Will was a guy who was on my podcast. He brought up your name before, and then Malik Rucker, you know, as you were on the V3 board, he was on the podcast as well, and I heard your name through him as well. So now that I've been able to kind of get in that space, you know, through those networking events and actually get to know you, and now we're nurturing this relationship and understanding like the impact that you make in multiple areas, being in a community, but also now we're going to talk about you being a force in sports. So I kind of want to, you know, kind of talk a little bit about you being a leader of women in sports, and then also kind of your time here with the Minnesota Timberwolves. So kind of walk us through, you know, just what you do here, I guess, at the Minnesota Timberwolves, and what does your day-to-day kind of look like with that?
Yeah, so I lead diversity, equity, and inclusion for the Minnesota Timberwolves and Lynx. My core responsibilities are really ensuring that people feel the sense of belonging on and off the court.
Yep.
I've had the pleasure of, you know, not only working with our team, but, you know, our business employees, our basketball employees, coaches, players, and really our fans, too. I do a lot of fan diversification work. And I found that this work is so valuable because the NBA and WNBA are really built on diversity.
Yep.
And the embracing of not only those words, right, diversity, equity, and inclusion, I saw that it was important for me to be able to, like, contribute to their sense of belonging. I had the pleasure of being mentored by our former Chief Diversity Officer, True Pettigrew. And when he took me on his team, like, it was amazing. Like, I got to not only, like, learn and grow and see where I can make impact, but he taught me the power of influence, the impact of just seeing people and meeting them where they are, right, and not where I want them to be. And it got me to the point where I was like, you know what, I love this work. And this has always been the soul, like the core of who I am, right, helping people feel that sense of belonging because I knew what it felt like to not belong. And so when we talk about, you know, going beyond just including people, making sure that they feel like they belong in the rooms, making sure they have what they need, making sure they feel empowered. And so as a Black woman in sports, it's been great to see, you know, people just like not only embracing others, but embracing me, embracing the vision, and seeing DEI within themselves, right? Even amongst all of the, you know, attack on the work, you know, we've stayed strong and committed as an organization. So kudos to the Minnesota Timberwolves and Lynx for, you know, keeping the work grounded as a value. Because if we didn't, I wouldn't be here, and they see it as a value. And so we continue to, you know, invest in that work, invest in our fans, and make sure that we're always, you know, questioning who isn't in the room so that we can expand and bring more people along.
Very powerful. Very powerful. I thank you for giving that breakdown. And what I want you to talk about now with being a leader in this space, you know, you being a Black woman, kind of walk us through some of the, you know, what would I say? I want you to walk us through a little bit of, because as you talked about just now, is the visual representation of it all. That's important to create the vision behind why it's important to have certain people in the room, to have different ideas, and to have different strategic like thoughts around like why this is value and why it should be important to a business model. You know, because a lot of businesses will say we want our community to reflect our work. you know, are in, where we work at. And to do that, you have to what do I want to say? You have to you gotta not necessarily put your money where your mouth is. It's more so just you gotta value the word that you're saying. So if I put out a statement today and we not doing none of that stuff, then it's just like, why are we talking about it?
Yeah.
You know. So I just wanted you to talk a little bit about now, just you know, some of the obstacles maybe as a Black woman in this leadership type of role. What are some of the corporate obstacles? What are some of the just obstacles that you think other up and coming leaders that are just going through, just trying to find a way that they might run into and something to be aware of?
Yeah, I would say the biggest obstacle is, you know, if there's not a lot of rooms where you're represented and you are the representation. So understanding that you do have a responsibility and a duty to extend that ladder, to create space for others. And sometimes it can be very it can feel isolating because you're, you know, as a Black woman, and this is beyond sports, like in my career, you know, we always had this notion of trying to prove our worth. And knowing that, you know, I was at this panel and this woman talked about how, you know, they love our ideas, but they fear our leadership. And so when you get brought in these rooms where it's like, oh, we love your creative ideas, but we'll never see you as an equal, that's hard.
It's hard.
That's really hard because then, you know that you're never seen as the leader that you are. But that starts, you know, again, not allowing people to have power over you in that way and knowing, you know, your influence. And a lot of that takes, you know, strategy. And I think a lot of us don't take the time to understand a strategy because as a Black person, I understand how our Black community has been conditioned to be the truth tellers, but sometimes we got to let the truth reveal itself. We don't need to get the title of, oh, she going to come in here and just say what's on her mind. Actually, no, I'm not. Not this time.
Yep.
I'm going to let it reveal itself. And so sometimes we just have to lean in with a little more strategy. And I'm not saying go away from who you naturally are or go against the grain. But we got to have a little more strategy and we got to understand and protect ourselves because a lot of times in the Black community, we think that it's healthy to catch everything and it's not. Sometimes we don't need to be catching other people and other things that, you know, are not serving us in a positive way. And so those are obstacles, right? And a lot of it is just unlearning those limiting beliefs, unlearning, you know, some of the things that have been cultural norms that are actually not positive for us, and making space for others, right? And not feeling that because I'm going to help you, Dior, it's going to take away from me. No, that's actually not the case. It's going to make us stronger. And knowing that we are truly better together is so important because I think where we get lost is that we get so territorial with things and that we don't want to share and help the next person. But again, it's not taken from me. It's actually building us up. And so once we can have that confidence within ourselves, then it just helps everyone else. But until we can get to that better point where we are really uplifting each other and not tearing each other down or being a part of the trauma that we've, you know, already experienced and transferring that onto each other, we just have to build more togetherness.
Most definitely. And I love everything that you said, and I think it's gonna come with time because I think we're kind of, how do I want to put it, it's the strategy part that you talked about. And I think when I mean it's gonna come with time is because a lot of people who might look like us, who are leaders and who are elevating in these different spaces, and we most definitely want to make sure we're creating other spaces for people who look like us to kind of thrive in those spaces as well. But it's kind of what you alluded to. Sometimes you can't act on it right away, or you can't say you can say it. But I think what I'm hovering over is just being raw. It's you have to come up with strategy. You have to make sure that is operating in the language that it needs to operate in. It's just, I think, just understanding your environment, you know, and creating that space in a certain type of way. And I think probably I might be confusing my audience, but I get where you coming from as a leader in these type of spaces of saying, hey, I'm most definitely not trying to, have any of my relationships, be transactional or come off as I'm just trying to do this just to be seen as, a good person, but you actually are that. So you have to figure out what's the strategy behind it. You have to, just be, it's a lot to that. I'm kind of losing my words and my thoughts right now, but I do appreciate this conversation, everything we talked about. I want to, I'm going to ask you, one of the last things I would ask you, is there any closing advice that you want to give to the audience, and also talk a little bit about what might be in the horizon? I know you kind of brought up in the All In moment about the B podcast. I know you guys probably have some episodes probably coming up in the near future, but anything that you want to provide the audience with some advice, or just what might be in the horizon to kind of look out for?
Yeah, I think my closing advice would be, honestly, trust the process. I know that, it really is, it can be very cliche, but do not rush things to happen. Let things thoughtfully unfold for you while you're doing your part, right? And I think don't forget to do the inner work.
That part.
Right? Because you want to be healthy mentally, physically, all the things. But let the process be the process, because once you actually get to the outcome, it's probably not, as exciting, right, as the process, because you're going to learn so much in it. And so. And
she's saying actively put in the work while trusting the process.
Yes.
Do not just trust the process and just think things are going to happen overnight. You most definitely have to put in the work, the repetition, and all of that stuff is going to amount to, trusting the process.
Yes, that consistency, right? And document it. Mm-hmm. Document it. And I'm not saying document it for others, but document it for yourself, so you can have those moments where if, you're being challenged or feel weak, you can refer back to how far you came.
Most definitely.
And so, trust the process, document it, have consistency, and just know that it will all work out. And lastly, I would say, stop comparing where you are in your journey to others, because, one, you don't know how they got there. And sometimes when you think about how they got there, you're like, I don't want that to be my journey. But, don't compare yours, because you're going to, comparison, what is a thief of joy, they say? And so, don't compare where people are to where you could be. Because sometimes people's success comes earlier, and you don't know. People are up one day and down the next. So just focus on where you're going.
Most definitely. Yeah. Most definitely. She's dropping gems. And, again, I appreciate you coming on this platform. This was most definitely a powerful conversation. I know this is going to be a powerful conversation, and, just you kind of, I guess just, giving me your word and nurturing the relationship. I think this is just kind of opening the doors to understanding why storytelling is important, So I do appreciate you coming on this platform. Always shout out to One Goal Media behind, just catching this content and doing the great things that they do. Shout out to X Hydration, which you guys see here in front of us. Definitely a great drink. We got the strawberry lemonade, and we have the Arctic berry here. So be sure to check that out. Links will be, provided to you guys. I'm trying to think what else. I think that might be it, man. This is a very, very powerful conversation with, turning pain into purpose with Bianca Dawkins. And be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel. Follow us on TikTok, Instagram. Bianca, her socials will be listed as well. If it's any, thing that you want to kind of talk about as far as your platforms to specifically follow, you can talk about that right now. But I think we're pretty solid on everything. And man, this is a great conversation, great episode, and be sure to tune in, man. Signing out.
I was trying to sell a deal just like last week, trying to run plays and run it up like the mathletes. It's in my DNA to have hope and make a way. Good energy will hit that MJ fade away. Miss me with the hate and now, bruh, not today. Stayed in my lane, didn't complain, this was meant for me.